It's 1923. A German professor walks into a bookstore with a wheelbarrow. Not because he's moving, because that's how much cash it takes to buy a single book. The wheelbarrow isn't a metaphor, it's documented. People were literally carting physical cash through the streets of Weimar, Germany, because the currency had been printed so far into worthlessness that the paper weighed more than the value it claimed to hold. And yet, somewhere in that same city, there were people who were fine. Not rich, but fine. When you look at every financial collapse in history, not one or two, but all of them, the same five things keep showing up on the surviving side of the wreckage, every single time. So here's what almost nobody talks about when they discuss financial crashes. Every collapse in history destroyed something specific. The Great Depression wiped out banks and paper wealth on a scale that took a decade to recover from. Weimar Germany turned savings into confetti. Argentina's 2001 crisis froze bank accounts overnight. People woke up one morning and the money they thought they had simply wasn't there anymore. Venezuela turned lifetime savings into nothing in the space of a few years. The first the financial crisis and all the collapses throughout history is gold and silver. And I know how that sounds, but stay with me, because what happened in Weimar Germany makes the point better than anything else could. By 1923, a loaf of bread cost 200 billion marks. 200 billion. The currency had been printed into literal worthlessness. But an ounce of gold still bought what it had always bought. See, you cannot print gold, and you cannot manufacture it at scale. The earth produces roughly 3,500 tons of it per year, and that number barely moves regardless of what any government wants. And in the Great Depression, while the Dow was collapsing 89%, gold mining stocks were doubling. Physical metal doesn't go to zero because it is not a promise, it's just a thing. The second is foreign, always the first casualty. Argentina in 2001, the peso collapsed overnight. People who had dollars physically in their possession, literally hidden under floorboards and inside walls because their bank accounts had been frozen, kept their purchasing power entirely intact, while everyone around them watched their savings evaporate. Lebanon, Venezuela, and Zimbabwe. Same pattern every single time. A local bank account is a promise from a system that may be days away from breaking. Hardcore foreign currency is fuel already in the tank that a domestic crisis simply cannot drain. The third is productive farmland. This one sounds almost too simple. The Great Depression data is unambiguous. Families who owned their own land, who could grow food and raise animals, were dramatically more resilient than urban wage earners who depended entirely on the cash economy. When the cash economy seized up, they just kept farming. See, farmland doesn't go to zero because food is not optional. When banks close and currencies collapse and stock markets crater, the land that produces food retains its value precisely because the demand for it produces never disappears. The fourth is real estate, but with the condition that most people skip right over, because heavily leveraged real estate was actually one of the biggest victims of the Great Depression. Homes were foreclosed in 1935. The real estate that survived was debt-free or close to it. Here's the thing about leverage. Borrowed money stacked on top of an asset. When the system freezes, the debt is still due even when the value drops. So leveraged real estate becomes a trap. But a house you own outright doesn't disappear when the mortgage market collapses. It keeps the rain off your head, and you can rent it out for cash. Fifth is ownership in businesses that sell things people literally cannot stop buying. Things like food, soap, and basic hygiene, which are essential utilities. In Venezuela's hyperinflation, companies selling food and cleaning supplies kept generating real revenue, while banks and financial firms collapsed entirely. Depression, firms tied to basic agricultural production declined in price but never stopped operating, and they recovered faster than almost everything else. Because here's the main thing: people stop buying cars in a crisis, they stop buying vacations. Everything else is burning, which means their cash flow, the fuel that keeps a business alive, never fully runs dry. What connects all five of these is the same underlying principle. They are either impossible to inflate away, directly tied to something people cannot live without, or physically real in a way that nothing can eliminate. Paper money can be printed until it means nothing to people. Promises can also be broken, but soil will still grow food and essential businesses still sell what people need. Every crash, every different country and trigger exactly the same. And when you look at those five things long enough, a pattern emerges that goes deeper than investment strategy. Every single one of them is at its core a rejection of abstraction. Paper money is an abstraction. A bank is an abstraction. A stock certificate is an abstraction. They are all representations of value, promises that a number on a screen or a piece of paper means something real. And they work extraordinarily well right up until the moment the system behind them stops being trusted. What survives every collapse is the thing that abstract to begin with. Human civilization has spent thousands of years increasingly sophisticated layers of abstraction: money, bonds, derivatives, digital balances, each one more removed from the physical world than the last. And every time those layers fail, people reach for the same things their grandparents would have recognized without explanation. The five assets that survive every crash are not just a hedge against financial collapse. They're a reminder of collapse. They're a reminder of what the financial system was always trying to represent in the first place.